Shaken, not stirred. No Time to Die is Daniel Craig's grand send-off as the iconic 007, and fans can probably guess what happens to him at the end. Directed by Cary Joji Fukunaga, the film wraps up all the loose ends of the Bond universe and wipes the slate clean for whatever comes next. And we'll break down all that, plus we'll get to the bottom of that explosive ending and what it means for the future of the Bond franchise. But before we get to any of that, I have to warn you, we're about to spoil everything about No Time to Die. So if you haven't seen it yet, or if you don't want to know, now would be the time to make a quick exit before we spoil the living daylights out of this movie. Okay, now that we're past that spoiler warning, let's get right to the ending. James Bond is dead. Like, exploded dead. After killing a bunch of bad guys, including Rami Malek's Safin, Bond has to stay behind to keep the blast doors open to Safin's island supervillain facility, so when the bombs fall, they'll actually destroy the base containing what's left of Project Heracles, which we'll explain in a second, but basically it's a deadly nanobot poison and weapon of mass destruction accidentally created by M, who somehow is still running MI6. But Bond does it! He saves the world, saves the girl and their daughter. Yes, by the way, James Bond is a daddy now. Or he was. Anyway, Bond doesn't die in a cheeky way where he might pop up later at the end of this movie. We watch the bombs fall and obliterate the MI6 agent once known as 007, which is sad, really, especially since Bond had just found out that he had a daughter and everything. Okay, so that is a lot to lay on you all at once, so let's recap a little to show how we wound up there. Now the movie opens with a flashback. Remember Dr. Madeleine Swan from Spectre? She's the daughter of Mr. White. Anyway, Safin kills her mom, claiming revenge on Mr. White, who allegedly murdered his entire family, which is a story she sort of told in Spectre. But here, we see young Madeleine run and fall into an icy lake, and Safin saves her instead of killing her too. Fast forward a few decades, and James Bond is living the quiet life with Madeleine, vacationing in a quaint little town in Italy. That is, until Bond visits the gravesite of his old flame Vesper Lind, and has a quiet moment of reflection until the gravesite explodes. Spectre agents are there in Italy with plans to kill Bond and Madeleine, but thanks to some fancy driving, they both escape. But Bond is convinced that Madeleine set him up, so he puts her on a train and tells her she'll never see him again, which is funny, because fast forward 5 years and yeah, she absolutely sees him again. Oh, and Madeleine also has a daughter now, whom at first she claims isn't Bond, but it's obvious that she absolutely is. The reason Bond and Madeleine reunite? Spectre commandos attack an MI6 lab where Heracles was developed. They steal the nanobot virus and the scientist who created it. Okay, so here's the thing about Heracles. Since it's nanobots, the virus can be coded to specific DNA, so it kills that person and anybody that shares enough of that DNA, like family members. And we see it work in Cuba, where Bond infiltrated a Spectre birthday party for Ernst Blofeld, who is still alive and imprisoned after the last Bond movie, Spectre. Anyway, Blofeld intended to use Heracles to murder Bond, but that pesky scientist who created the virus coded it to kill all of Spectre instead. More on that in a minute, but when Bond visits Blofeld in prison, he accidentally kills him after infecting him with Heracles, thanks to Madeleine, who applied some Heracles to her wrist that she'd gotten from Safin, coded to kill Blofeld, that wound up on Bond's skin when they touched. Nothing to it, right? So at that point, all of Spectre is dead, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. So anyway, Safin captures Madeleine and Matilda and heads to the aforementioned island hideout, where he's mass-producing Heracles so he can sell it to literally whatever bad guy has a check that clears. You know, standard supervillain stuff. And in the final fight between Bond and Safin, the villain infects 007 with a version of Heracles that will kill Madeleine or Matilda if Bond ever touches either of them again. So that, plus the fact that a bunch of missiles were already in the air on the way to destroy the island facility, plus the fact that he'd been shot, I think maybe several times at this point, plus that he's already had to reopen the blast doors once, Bond decides to stay put and finish the mission. But remember how we said this was all M's fault? Because it totally was. Heracles existed in the first place because he wanted to create the perfect assassin's weapon. Kill only the target. Everybody else is safe. His plan for Heracles was similar to how Tony Stark created Ultron over in the MCU, but at least then, Tony Stark was on hand to clean up the mess himself. M instead gets to send in 007 to clean up his mess. 2 007s actually. And because James Bond is, after all, James freaking Bond, he accomplishes the mission. He kills Safin personally, saves the woman he loves and their daughter and the whole world, but in the end, he had to stay on the supervillain island to keep the blast doors open so the bombs launched by the good guys didn't just bounce off the doors with all of them Heracles nanobots inside. And that's how Daniel Craig's James Bond meets his end. We are with him on the island and watching the bombs fall and detonate. He's gone, like gone. We even see Q's smart blood flatlining to confirm it. With the world saved and Heracles destroyed, M and the gang toast to the legacy of James Bond, the 007 who died thanks to M's incompetence. Now, they can't kill off James Bond without doing something about Spectre, the evil spy organization 007 and MI6 have had to deal with since the very beginning, and No Time to Die handles this pretty neatly, thanks to Safin and Project Heracles. We talked earlier a bit about Blofeld, who had been cooling his heels in a super prison before Safin used a lethal combo of Madeline, Bond, and Heracles to assassinate him. Before his death, Blofeld was seeing everything going on through a cybernetic eye worn by the mercenary Primo. Later in the film, Bond uses that gadget to kill the mercenary. It was kind of pretty cool. Honestly, didn't see it coming. Point is, when all is said and done, all known Spectre agents are gone, thanks mostly to the Heracles squad wipe. Blofeld intended to kill Bond with the nanobot poison at his birthday party in Cuba, but wound up killing all of his co-workers instead. Actually, I guess Blofeld and M have that in common. Anyway, this might be the first indicator that whatever comes next for the Bond franchise might likely be a reboot, regardless of who is chosen to fill the role of 007. And more on that in a minute. But without Spectre around to give MI6 the business, the main villain or villains of the Bond universe are no longer on the table. Now, it's not outside the realm of possibility that new adversaries could arise to fill the gap Spectre left behind, but if MI6 isn't battling Spectre, is it even MI6?
You get in my way, I will put a bullet in your knee.
007 is dead. Long live 007. We have to mention that James Bond isn't the only 007 in this movie. Remember, he opened the movie living that quiet life in Italy before everything goes sideways. In his absence, MI6 appointed a new 007, an agent named Nomi. And though Bond specifically says that 007 is just a number, it's clear that he's a little miffed that his old handle had been assigned to a younger agent. And this causes a little bit of friction between the two earlier in the film, but by the end, Nomi and Bond had totally won each other's respect, and neither could have saved the world without the other. That said, a natural question viewers will have watching No Time to Die will be, is this the new 007? Well, obviously, she is 007 in the movie, so that answers that question. But as for the future, it's still a little unclear as to what that all looks like. The current MI6 team of Nomi's 007, Naomi Harris's Moneypenny, Ben Wishaw's Q, and Ralph Fiennes' completely incompetent M all make it through this movie and could easily go on and have more adventures. If nothing else, they could cross the globe cleaning up M's other potentially world-ending f***ups. Sounds like a recipe for success, or maybe some disaster and then success, or something along those lines. But of course, there's always the possibility for a hard reboot of the entire Bond franchise, which would not only mean a new James Bond, but it would also mean a whole new MI6 crew, including an M who, I don't know, doesn't almost kill the world? James Bond producers say the search for a new Bond won't start until 2022, which at this point is just around the corner. But here's the thing. There's no post-credit scene in No Time to Die, but once the credits have rolled, we still get those traditional words appearing on the screen. James Bond will return. But how, who, when? All still up in the air. And now's the part where we run down the Easter eggs we found in this one. Here's what we got. Bond visits Vesper Lynd's gravesite in the beginning of the film. Vesper, of course, appeared in Casino Royale, played by Ava Green. The character Vesper Lynd also appears in 1967's version of Casino Royale, portrayed by actress Ursula Andress, who also appeared in 1962's Dr. No as a completely different Bond girl, Honey Ryder. The original Bond girl, as it turns out. But speaking of Vesper and dead women in Bond's life, we also see Judi Dench's favorite bulldog desk ornament in Bond's storage facility, because that thing just won't go away. R.I.P. Felix Leiter, played by Jeffrey Wright, Bond's close friend and ally in the CIA, gets gutshot and drowned in No Time to Die. Wright's version of Leiter appeared in Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, but the character has appeared in no fewer than 10 James Bond films over the years, played by 6 different actors. Classic Bond villain Ernst Stavro Blofeld is the CEO and founder of Spectre. Not sure if that's his official job title, but he's played by supervillain supreme Christoph Waltz in No Time to Die, reprising his role from 2015's Spectre. The character Blofeld, of course, is kind of the Joker to 007's Batman. Or is the Joker Batman's Blofeld? Look, whatever. Blofeld has been played by 5 different actors, and in addition to Spectre in No Time to Die, he's appeared in You Only Live Twice, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Diamonds Are Forever, the unofficial Never Say Never Again, and he got dropped into a smokestack in the cold open of For Your Eyes Only, even though they legally couldn't call him Blofeld, but Come on, it's Blofeld. And of course, there's Matilda, who holds a unique place in the Bond mythology, being one of the very few direct results of James Bond's rampant sexual exploits. Look, the guy gets around. And of course, wouldn't you know it, the second the guy gets a chance to step up and take some responsibility for his actions, he just so happens to choose to stay behind, save the world, and get exploded. So James Bond, hero who saves the world, or guy who really doesn't want to be a dad? And beyond that, there are a ton of little nods and direct homages to the Bond franchise. Things like, first of all, Jamaica. 007 spent more time in Jamaica in the books than in the movies, but he's there in Dr. No and Live and Let Die. But the original tie is from Bond creator Ian Fleming, who retired to the Caribbean on a Jamaican estate he named Goldeneye. Starting with the title sequence, No Time to Die uses some of the design from the first Bond film, Dr. No, those cool little pastel-colored dots. Then driving along a seaside cliff with Madeline, Bond tells her that they've got all the time in the world, something that George Lazenby's Bond said to his super dead wife in On Her Majesty's Secret Service as they were driving along a cliff. You can also pick out some of that film's score in No Time to Die. When Bond returns to MI6 as a civilian, he tosses his visitor's badge in a bin in Moneypenny's office with the same casual confidence Sean Connery tossed his hat onto the hat rack every time he walked in. Also in the halls of MI6, there are oil paintings of former M's, including Judi Dench, as well as Robert Brown, who served as Roger Moore's M in Octopussy and A View to a Kill, and Timothy Dalton's in License to Kill in The Living Daylights. At one point, Bond helps a car fall onto a guy who's begging for his life. Now, Roger Moore sort of did the same thing in For Your Eyes Only, and also supposedly he never liked that his Bond did that. He said it was too dark. There's also Safin's Garden of Death, which is a nod to the book version of You Only Live Twice, in which Blofeld lives on a secluded Japanese island where he's collected a deadly bunch of flora and low-key invites people to use his garden to commit suicide. There's also a ton of great Ken Adam-inspired production design that harkens back to the original production designer of the franchise, like the submarine base that's laid out a lot like the one in The Spy Who Loved Me, the nuclear tubes in the water from Dr. No, and Safin's trapezoidal-shaped lair, and honestly, I could talk Ken Adam production design all day. But I won't. So what did you think of No Time to Die? Was it a fitting send-off for Craig's Bond? And what happens to 007 after this? Let's hear your best theories in the comments below. Anyway, thanks for watching this episode of Canon Fodder, and for more 007, check out our full review of No Time to Die, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to drink. Watch, wherever you like to watch me drink. For what it's worth, this is a real martini. And it got room temp while I was recording this. Oh, I'm a tough guy. I'm a big tough guy.